Why would the Democrats vote for a higher defense budget than Donald Trump? Only one reason. Only one reason: corporate corruption. Because if they were currying favor with defense contractors, it's the only reason the Democrat, nominally progressive Democrat, would vote for it. Both parties are owned lock, stock, and barrel by corporations. How can we do this if both parties are so beholden to corporate money? Hi, I'm Jeff Ballinger, and I'm a lifelong social justice advocate. I spent 11 or 12 years abroad on about 6 different foreign assignments for the AFL-CIO, and I did activism also in the United States, starting with voter registration when I was 18 years old, young Democrats, and then college Democrats. And I felt like participation was the thing that really needed to be upgraded in our U.S. democracy, because participation has always been low. And now we have voter suppression that we're facing. It's going to be a big priority for me to call out the Republicans on voter suppression, which has got to be a huge issue, and we're setting our democracy backwards, and especially in the area of labor rights. I was in the 1977 fight for labor law reform. They filibustered that bill for 5 weeks. They tied up the Senate, the conservatives, because they don't want Americans getting together, because they could fight big money. It's the only way you fight big money is with unions and with people getting together. So I'm going to be working to fight for labor law reform and expanding the franchise. And I was very interested in international law and human rights. And so I took the international law and the human rights courses. And then I said to myself, oh my God, there's no place to adjudicate these cases. I mean, you have laws, but I spent the last year of law school in media studies, media law. And because I knew the only place to adjudicate would be on the streets and, you know, the court of public opinion. So.
This is Jeffrey Ballinger. Jeff, can you introduce yourself and tell what group you're working with?
Yeah, I'm the director of Press for Change, and we brought Cici Sukaisi, the worker from Indonesia, with help from the Global Exchange, a group based in San Francisco. We have 7 years of experience following these shoe companies in Indonesia, and it's a pretty awful story. I mean, they're mentioned in the Human Rights Report to the Congress in 1992. There was a headline in 1991 that said world shoe giants rape worker rights. I mean, this is in the Indonesian press, which is not the freest press in the world, but you know, they've even been muzzled lately because they just couldn't believe the exploitation in these factories.
Tonight, Roberta Baskin reports on one of the most successful athletic shoe companies anywhere, one where workers may be making shoes, but what they can't make is a living.
I played softball when I first arrived here, and some of the guys on the team were from Nike, and one of them asked me what I did. I said, I'm working with the American unions. We have an office here to help the Indonesian workers. And he looked at me and he said, I'm your worst nightmare. And months later, when we did the survey, we found that he was right. They are the worst. They were setting the low end of the wage scale.
6,000 workers put down their Nikes and walked out on strike. All they wanted was the Indonesian minimum wage, about $1.30 a day.
This is where the logo used to be for American Superconductor, AMSC. They had their technology stolen in 2011 by their biggest customer, Sinovel, wind turbine technology. They went from 900 employees down to 200 almost overnight. Recently, a federal criminal case was won by the U.S. government against Sinovel, the first time ever a federal court has found a Chinese company guilty of intellectual property theft, which happens all the time. My problem with this case is that no Democrat in Congress stood up and said, let's bring the CEO and some workers down to talk about this, to celebrate this victory. We have to be more vocal. The Republicans have so demonized government for 40 years, they've got Americans thinking that regulation is no good and government's no good. So we've got to be more vocal, and if I'm elected to Congress, I'll make sure that this company, Sinovel, has to pay $1.2 billion in the 3 civil cases that are now going on in China. I'm not going to rest until that happens. These workers deserve restitution. One very concrete example from the 50s was the Division of Economic Research at the National Labor Relations Board. It was shut down because of the Red Scare, and I really think we need to resuscitate that office, because we need to know what jobs are coming 20 and 30 years out, as well as the near term, so that parents can avail themselves of opportunities, and businesses would know, frankly, who to train and what kind of training is needed. I would also advocate something called the corporate crime database and annual report by the Department of Justice, because we have too many businesses that are just operating with impunity in this country. You have in the opioid area alone this case where Cardinal Health was shipping 20 million pills to a West Virginia town of 3,000, only 2 pharmacies in this town. And they're supposed to inform the Drug Enforcement Administration when there's an inordinate amount of drugs being shipped somewhere. They didn't. I think we have to claw back this money and give it to treatment programs. 60% of House Democrats voting for a defense budget higher, $50 billion higher than Donald Trump asked for. This was an abomination. And what's even worse is the 40% of the House members that didn't vote for that weren't on the Capitol steps raising hell, because I would have said that $650 billion is too much by a third, and we can't sustain that, because all of you in this room know this is a discretionary pie. And if you want to have SNAP, if you want to have CHIP, if you want to protect children, after-school programs and things like this, you can't give the Defense Department this kind of money. I have a specific program that would close bases. They have to, the military has to give a list to Congress every year, 40 bases in the U.S. and 40 bases abroad, because on their own, they'll never do it. Congress has to take back control of that defense budget, because they've given it up to the Pentagon, and they'll never close a base if it's up to them. I was in Afghanistan 2012 and 2013 training prosecutors for the State Department, and these men and women, they deserve to know why we're in Afghanistan. I think Congress ought to debate Afghanistan after 17 years. I think the soldiers that serve for our country need to know what our objectives are, why we're there. Pentagon budget needs to be cut. As Representative McGovern said, we have to take a scalpel for waste, fraud, and abuse. We've got to motivate people. We've got to get them out knocking on doors, talking to their neighbors, because right now, money rules Washington. I don't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican. We've got no differentiation. We are raising money from the same insurance companies, the same Wall Street firms, and the same banks. You can't differentiate your policies if all your money is coming from the same sources. So, I hope you remember the guy who's going to fight to get money out of politics, Jeff Ballinger.